Hello, everybody. Excuse me. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe. That's the guy from the Winnipeg Free Press. Nice to have him here. Together, we're Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show following a grinded-out affair with the Florida Panthers. Paul Maurice finally gets his first win back in Winnipeg. Low event game here. Felt a little bit like looking in a mirror, and that's kind of oversimplifying it. I thought for the vast majority of this game, the Florida Panthers kind of carried the play, but the Winnipeg Jets did a really, really good job of not giving up the middle of their ice. So while the Panthers had the puck a lot, felt like they didn't have a lot of sustained pressure. The Winnipeg Jets would pop up with, a decent chance in the middle of the ice here or there. Not a lot to talk about with that game, though. We'll talk a little bit later about like the Jets strategy in this one. I wanted to get though into what I know so many of you are thinking about. People are excited about it. And if you take a look in the standings right now, folks, the Winnipeg Jets, before they started this streak of games where they now have 12 points in their last 16 games. 12 points out of not 16 games, 12 out of a possible 16 points. So they've played 8 games. They've got 12 points in the bank. That's pretty impressive over that time. If you remember, Renny had said it would take a 700 win percentage for them to get into the playoffs, starting back at game 42 is what I said. At 10 game blocks. You go win 7 of 10, or get the equivalence of points to walk away with 14 points out of 20 points. That's going to get you there. And I think I can kind of highlight things, and let's do it on the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive. Hop into the Toyota, and I'll kind of break it down for you here. So the Jets, 11 points back before this little streak happened. Now they're 6 points back. I know a lot of people are excited about that. They basically have closed almost half the gap like that. 8 games, boom. They're clearly going to the playoffs. This is a done deal. Go Jets, go. I know a lot of people are thinking that. This is why Renny, and listen, Renny learned a long time ago, I don't backpedal takes. If I'm giving you, the numbers and the crunching and all that kind of stuff, I don't backpedal on it halfway through. I hold it till the end. But this is why I'm telling you that I still think that it's a tough go for the Winnipeg Jets. Never mind the idea that right now they're operating not just at 700 points percentage. They're at an 800 points percentage since that game 42 mark. So they're ahead of what I had talked about. So the numbers that we're looking at right now have them ahead. And yes, 6 points back is what they are at. Now, if we take a look at who they trail with those 6 points, they trail the San Jose Sharks, the Seattle Kraken, and the LA Kings. All 3 of those teams with 6 points up on the Winnipeg Jets. But here's the deal. All 3 of those teams have a game in hand. It would be proper or mathematically wise to think that one of those teams is going to win the game in hand, which means they'll have 55 points, which means 6 points is actually 8 points. And therein lies the rub. So we talked about it. 40 games, that's the runway. You're in the race. You're the car at the back of the NASCAR pack, and you're trying to weave and bob your way to get in there, and the Jets are doing a good job of it right now. But the fact of the matter is the likelihood is that they are 8 points back with even games played once Seattle, San Jose, LA plays their next game. You're thinking probably one of those teams is going to win. So what that means is that an 800 winning percentage, the Winnipeg Jets have closed the gap by 3 points with 20% of the track left. 3 points. That's how hard it is to make up points in a scenario like this. Now, some of you are crunching the numbers in your head, and you're pulling your boots off and your socks off, and you're starting to add things up, and you're saying, okay, well, 3 points with 20% of the track, then that means that they could make up 15 points by the time this is all said and done, and they would get into the playoffs with a 4-point cushion. You're right. You're right if you're crunching the math like that. But if you're crunching the math like that, you are making the assumption that the Winnipeg Jets are going to continue on an 800 points percentage going forward. And let me just tell you, I love the hopefulness. That's not happening. As good as the Winnipeg Jets have played, that is not happening. So you have to get to the idea of what is sustainable. Now, if the Winnipeg Jets get 2 more points in their next 2 games, at the end of that first 10-game block, they will have hit the 700-point mark. That's the pace that they will have had, and they will need to keep that pace for the next 30 games after that. So the question becomes, can they do that? Should we expect that they will do that? One of the things I think is happening here with the Winnipeg Jets, this is a little bit of the mid-season grind. You're seeing a lot of teams are kind of taking a little bit of a dip right now. This is where it's traditionally happens. I've had coaches, NHL coaches, tell me before, especially with good teams and teams that, you know, are feel like they're going places, that this is the time of the year that they rest. This is the time of the year they take a step back. They get to the trade deadline, they get their team in order, and then the step gets taken forward. I would suggest, and maybe Renny has no idea what he's talking about, the Winnipeg Jets are making hay right now at a good time to make hay. It's a time of the year where there's a lot of teams out there that just are in that little bit of the mid-season lull. What we do know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is by the end of the year, teams start ramping up their games. Hockey gets harder in the last 20, the last 25 games. And because of that, it's tough to expect that the Winnipeg Jets, even if they set this pace right now, are going to keep going at that clip. So, hey, I take a look at this situation. Did I think that the Winnipeg Jets were going to come off an 11-game losing streak and in their next 8 games rip off an .800 points percentage? No, I didn't think that. But do I think that the sustainability of that is something that is in the realm of possibility? Yes. Is it in the realm of likelihood? Not even close. So I get it. I'm not trying to rain on your parade. What I am doing here is I'm talking sense. And maybe by talking sense, I'm getting a bunch of people aggravated out there. And a bunch of people are saying, you just wait and see, Renny. You're going to be wrong. And I can't wait to cram it down your throat when it happens. And that's the beauty of things like this. I'm planting the flag. I've planted it. And you know what? In a time when people are asking me to pick up that flag and wave a new flag, I've come out with a big giant hammer and I'm pounding the flag down even deeper. But if at the end of the season, I need to rip that flag out of the ground because Renny was wrong, it will be so much sweeter for all of you if I have to do that. And that is the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive, folks. And this January, it's time to Toyota at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Finance the new 2026 BZ XLE all-electric SUV from $158 weekly for 60 months at 1.49% with a $5,599 down payment. But hurry, the offer ends February 2nd. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent and take that test drive today. All right, time to bring in the man with the best music in the business, who I've seen has been plugging numbers in his calculator the entire time I've been talking here. So I'm sure he's got a counter coming up ready to go. Here comes the man with the best music in the business, folks. Here comes Kenny. Ken, I'm going to start something off here. One of the quickest flaming comforts that I'm going to throw out here. And it's someone who I came out of my Toyota opening drive and brought a comment up by this man here, Stephen Braun coaching. I'm doing it again where he says, wake up call goes to Scheif's stick tape, 3 whiffs. I got to say, Ken, that play where he went in all alone and whiffed on it. I love this comment by Stephen Braun because Mark Scheifele is Mr. like I got my stick.
Details, yes.
Yeah, the details of his stick and the way it's taped and this and that. We heard all these funny stories over the years about how he'd like say to Andrew Kopp, your stick sucks. Give me your stick. And then he'd tell him all the things that were wrong and he'd make him tweak it and all this kind of stuff. And I just thought in that moment, and Stephen Braun brings up another couple of whiffs here tonight, I wonder if Mark Scheifele's whole world was just kind of like in turmoil inside his head because like the Terminator, he's assessed his stick and made sure that it has zero probabilities of missing. And then all of a sudden it did on this night. I like that because it made me think, I like the comment, made me think about Mark Scheifele, the stick Terminator. And
bad batch, I think. I don't know if it was the tape. Might have been a bad batch. I don't know.
Could have been a bad batch. Who knows if it was the tape? Who knows if someone gave him the wrong when the flex was off?
He did look at the tape, though, Sean, to your point. He did look at the tape after the first one.
And the Terminator eyes were going over it and, like he was checking everything out. Something was not computing. Maybe his Intel processor chip needs changing or something like that. But great comment here by Stephen Braun coaching, who walks out of the gate early with the Flame and Comfort hot take. And of course, that's brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. When you get down there, you're going to find it's one of the most impressive showrooms in all of Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside. Visit Flame and Comfort. They will take care of it for you. And Ken, I saw you in the bathroom after the game earlier on, and I was thinking, I've got a nickname for you with that outside, with that outfit on. The Valentine's Day Assassin. You look clean and mean, but a little bit of the pink going on here. It's a great look. The pocket square, everything's working. Of course, it's all working because Frankie and the boys down at Vittorio Rossi would have done you up right and made sure that everything matched, everything worked. Then they would have sent you on your way. If you're looking for that kind of attention to detail, you know what to do. Head on down to Corden Avenue, walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. Ken, a low event game. What did you make of it?
Yeah, interesting tilt, but in a different style of way, I guess, or a different kind of way than what we've seen recently. Certainly, it was a defensive battle for sure. High dangers, according to Natural Stat Trick, at all situations were 8-8, and again, that number still might be high, but there were some good saves that had to be made at both ends. But overall, this was again desperation and urgency. There's a fine line in those two words, Sean, and I think what we saw is that one of those teams was, slightly better at playing at that level, but the Jets kind of found a way to get the game to overtime. So for me, I thought it was a impressive job. Like we talked about point loss the other day against Toronto. This to me was like a point gained that wasn't necessarily there previously because of a tremendous forecheck. Stephen Braun was asking. I mean, Jonathan Taves slashed the stick. I don't think that gets called in a game, in a tight game like that. I think that was just a really good forecheck by Taves to cause
disrupting the stick, lift the stick.
Yeah, that's not.
I've got no problem with the play at all,
no,
and I don't think that gets called at any point of the game, to be honest with you.
No, and that's a hard play, in a really good job on the, ferocious forecheck there, but
unbelievable forecheck. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was, incredible play. I mean, it's Jonathan Taves just, the confidence continues to grow, and that's a play we didn't see a ton in the first 30 games, right? Disruptive on the forecheck, and Sean, you were in there. When I asked Cole Perfetti about the play, he basically said he didn't see it. The pass went through Aaron Ekblad and onto his tape. Like, it was one of those things where Ekblad's 6'5", Sean. He was a roadblock for Perfetti, but the pass is perfect, and he goes to the backhand fake in a beautiful play. So, anyways, that was one of the few offensive, exploits in a game. Yeah, there were a couple of really good chances. Tarasov, excellent save on Scheifele. Scheifele, I think, with the benefit of, for us, Sean, we see it from up here. He might have had a little bit more time than he thought at the time. But again, it was a heck of a save by Tarasov to push across. Overtime, a couple chances at both ends. Really, really good chance for Josh Morrissey. Instead of bar down, it's bar, like, not just bar out, it's bar almost, not almost. The puck went all the way into the Jets zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Connor Hellebuyck had to rush out and get it. So it was
have you ever been
plays we've seen.
Have you ever Josh Morrissey's done this before. Have you ever been on the ice with a player who's hit a post so hard it rebounded not just out of the zone but past center ice? I haven't, Ken. I've never seen that before.
Only possibility would have been Darcy Pelche when we traded for him in Winkler, but I don't think it was that far. Like maybe into the neutral zone, but never into the defensive zone. But that would be like one of the hardest shots I would have ever seen from a teammate. But wow, yeah, just wild. And it turned kind of a quiet-ish. I'm not going to say sluggish game because, Sean, it was not sluggish at all, because both teams did an outstanding job of limiting the space available. So I'm not saying it wasn't a sleepy game. It was a tough game because of how little that was available, because of how both teams defended, Sean. And I mean, we know the Panthers are the gold standard, right? I mean, say whatever you want. Yes, the Jets won the President's Trophy, but when it came to playing that style in the playoffs, Panthers have been to 3 straight Cup finals and won 2 of them. So they are the gold standard when it comes to, defending in hard games, even though they're missing their best defensive player in Alexander Barkov. They're missing Brad Marchand. They're missing, a handful, like 6 to 8 players. Their ability to still, it was interesting because listening to Paul Maurice, he said, yes, they look a little bit different, but they never really want to stray from their core identity and their values, right? So what we've kind of talked a lot about this year with the Jets is that they have strayed from their core values at times when it came to defending and puck management. Whereas the Panthers, even though they've been a little bit up and down lately and are still below the playoff line, they're still sticking to their core values in a, dog days of winter January game. And they're a gift guy. Trench warfare is how Paul Edmonds referred to it. That's kind of the style of game that it was. And no, it's not, it's not high event, but it high flips and whatever else. And there's just not a lot of room to attack. So I thought it was, I still find it to be an interesting game, Sean. Not all 2-1 games are, snooze fests. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't not a, we're going to see a little bit more action on Saturday night when the Detroit Red Wings come into town, right? I mean, that's just by virtue of the style that they play. And the Panthers, they have a fun team. They have some young up and coming, stars, and they've got some smart guys that know how to defend. So I think that, there may be a higher entertainment value on Saturday, but Sean, that was a playoff style game. So, I mean, playoff style games are welcome from where I sit.
Here's my beef with that game if you're the Winnipeg Jets. So for the most part, I felt the first 2 periods were played in a Panthers style of hockey.
Agreed.
Like the Panthers had the puck far more often. I thought they had the more dangerous of the chances, although I didn't think there was a lot of chances. I think the Winnipeg Jets realized the kind of game it was going to be, and you could see, even after the game, Scott Arniel in past games has been really kind of morose when they've only got 1 point. Tonight, he seemed to be kind of ecstatic. I think he felt the same way as you described it, Ken, how other games they lost a point. Tonight, it feels more from his perspective like they gained a point. Here's my deal with that. I feel like the Jets settled a little too much to be playing the Panthers style of game. And the problem with that for me is that barn was a library tonight for about 2 periods. And there was not a lot of reason for the fans to get excited, to get going. And part of that has to do with, okay, I understand that the Jets win, and you talked about it. They're the gold standard, the Panthers, when they play, that style of game. They play it as good as anyone. And I felt like the Jets played to survive it and played to get a bounce. Now, when they didn't get the bounce, and the Florida Panthers scored first, then we saw in the 3rd period, the Winnipeg Jets got got going. They started pushing. They started kind of trying to impose their style, and it's what got them that tying goal. But it's also what got them a couple other opportunities throughout that game where things looked really good, where they got a really huge cheer out of the crowd at one point because of the style of game that was playing. That they were playing and the kind of the pressure that they were putting on and bottling up the Florida Panthers the way that they did. And to me, if you're Florida, someone said it here tonight. I think it was T. Conapoli. He said Florida played the perfect road game. They kind of did. Like, if you're the Florida Panthers, you're walking away from that game and you're saying, great, guys, for the most part, we took the crowd out of it. We got the lead. Yeah, we didn't hold the lead, but we got it to overtime and got a point, which is crucial for us right now. And then we went out and we earned that extra point. It's easy to say that. I like the way the Jets played this game. I think it says something. That's a tough team to play against. They had a good game plan to kind of survive it. They didn't give the Florida Panthers a lot, but it felt to me like a team that needs to go out and get as many points as possible, played for the tie tonight and to see what else would happen. There's no better way for me to put it. And sometimes playing for the tie means that you're sitting back and you're just trying to win a game 0-0 and see what happens on the other side of that. That's not the kind of hockey that's going to electrify your crowd. And that's the advantage that the Winnipeg Jets had tonight. They had the crowd that has been really good for them against the Florida Panthers in the past. And I just think that was a little bit of a wasted opportunity. And I do think that if the Jets had given the crowd more opportunities to get into it in the first and the second period, sometimes that can build momentum. Sometimes that can give you that energy. And sometimes your crowd is the bellwether that says this is the game you should be chasing. And if you start chasing it, you're going to get a reaction out of us. That's what happened in the third period. If the Jets played more like the third period for the first two periods, I think they're walking away with a 3-1 victory in this game. So I'm not as want to be like, yeah, well, they got the 1 point against a really tough team. San Jose beat this team 5-1 the other night. Like, yes, they're the Florida Panthers. Yes, they can be dangerous. They're also missing Brad Marchand. They're also missing their best player in Sasha Barkov. If there was an opportunity to go at a team and beat a team and take
backup goalie
off the backup goalie, if there was a chance to go and take two points off the reigning Stanley Cup champs, that was it here tonight. And it feels to me like the Jets played for the tie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to throw that take out the window. I think maybe it might have been more a matter of Panthers imposing their style on the game. I mean, that's not to say that the Jets didn't want to dictate the play, but maybe the Florida just did a better job of that. And I think you said, like, part of the game plan was to, you got to clamp down. But I agree with you. I mean, after only 2 shots on net in the third period the other night, and one of them going into the empty net, I mean, the Jets didn't have a lot of offensive opportunities. Now, again, that credit to Florida for the way that they play and defend. But, I mean, to your point, if the Jets had been able to generate more, whether that's on the power play or even strength, I think they would have had a better chance for 2 rather than 1. The reason why I'm giving them more credit is that, I mean, yes, it is a reduced roster in terms of talent. The ability to clamp down in games is still there for Florida. So, for me, I think it would have been easy for the Jets to fade into the sunset in a game that was that hard in terms of how the opposition played. But yeah, I mean, it's still much like we've been talking about, Sean. There have just been too many missed, as well as the Jets have played in this block, as you mentioned, 5-1-2. There's a missed point against Toronto that should have been 2, and the bigger miss is Monday night in Chicago, Sean. That totally flips the script. Now they're 4 points back and only 2 teams or 3 teams to chase rather than 4, right? So yes, today they passed Calgary and they passed St. Louis the other night, but the task is just difficult because of what's ahead of them. Now, again, they have put themselves in a better position, but they're going to have to rip off another winning streak here if they want to continue to make up ground here.
Well, and here's something you talked about Chicago. Here's something that's a little bit part of that problem is we can say whatever we want about the teams that are 6 points up, the three teams that are
Yeah.
6 points up on the Winnipeg Jets. Chicago won tonight, and they won
Against
against
Carolina.
a Carolina team. The Predators won tonight, but one of the things that people, I think what happens is people set their sights on the team that's last place, and they just think, oh, we're just going to automatically pass all those other teams. The Chicago Blackhawks were a team that plummeted in the standings because they lost their best player.
Yep.
That player's back now, and he's doing well for them, and the team is back to playing better hockey. Like, here's the deal with it. You can take a look at tonight, you can say one more point, and you can look at the inactive teams that were playing, that are in that 8th, 9th, and 10th spot, and say one closer to them, but you lost ground on two teams that you're chasing here tonight. One of them, that's a team that is, going to be shaping in as well. So I don't know. I felt like the Jets played not to score, to have no one score here tonight. And I just think that there was more of an opportunity for them to play the style of game that they played in the third, rather than kind of, trying to play to a stalemate and see what happened from there. So when you don't, I guess my take on it is, when you don't play to score, don't be surprised if you end up in a game that goes to a shootout, which is like you lose a little bit of a control in that situation. The Jets lost control, and because that lost that 1 point here tonight. But you know who will always play to score? That's Cambrian Credit Union, who will help you score a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game. While you focus on home sweet home, our friends at Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. Now, that is what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. And Ken, can you give a shout out to Sweet Lou?
Of course, folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact Lou Ferlin at Rolla Page Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Now, Phyllis had said this. I can't seem to find the. Oh, here we go. Phyllis had talked about Connor Hellebuyck, said he allowed one goal until the shootout. Helly was not the problem. I thought Helly was actually very, very integral in the success that the Jets had tonight, because you could see how often the Florida Panthers were dumping the puck and rimming it around the boards, and you could see how often Connor Hellebuyck got out to play that puck. Was a little risky at times, no doubt it was. There was definitely one point where he got caught with the puck, and you could hear the crowd thinking that, oh no, here we go again scenario. But I actually thought Connor Hellebuyck did really, really well in two things tonight. I don't think he was challenged that much. You and I texted back and forth. It was going to be tricky to find a keg save of the game on this night, because the shots were not really that challenging going either way. But I thought Connor Hellebuyck did a good job of trying to affect the game in that way, because every time he stops the puck and plays it, that's a turnover. That's time that the Winnipeg Jets don't have to spend defending. It's the less likelihood of them getting scored on. I think that if he's not playing like that, the Florida Panthers do score more than one goal in this game. But the other thing that I don't know that people would have picked up on. And it wasn't the hardest shots going, but the Florida Panthers, quite often what they do is they just flip the puck towards the net to try and create a little bit of chaos and have guys chase and get there and try and arrive around the same time. What can happen with that is goalies can panic a little bit and kind of try and kick rebounds into different spots. I thought Connor Hellebuyck did a really, really good job tonight of taking his rebounds and putting them in places that either were spots where his defenders could go pick them up and they could get out of the zone, or spots that at the very least, if the Florida Panthers were going to get them, it was going to take them some time to go get that puck, which it gives the Jets time to kind of fall into their structure. So I actually do think in a way, and I mean, one of them is potentially a candidate for the Johnson Group Got You Covered Play of the Game. But I thought playing goal. Some goalies just stick to stopping the puck, and that is it. Connor Hellebuyck is not that guy. It's drove a lot of you crazy in the past. It's cost the Jets in the past. Think 2018 playoffs. That never stopped him. We talked about how important it was last year, him stopping the puck, playing it, distributing it to his teammates. Connor Hellebuyck went out tonight, and his biggest contribution was not stopping pucks. His biggest contribution was puck distribution, was stealing possession from the Florida Panthers, and was redirecting and buying time for his team to get into the right spots and defense. I personally thought it was a brilliant game, Ken, by Connor Hellebuyck.
Yeah, solid overall. I mean, I don't want to make this parallel too obscure, but Sean, that St. Louis Blues Stars series that featured Ben Bishop and Jordan Binnington, that's what I thought of today. And again, I'm not saying that Hellebuyck's at that level necessarily yet, but that series was dictated on where the dump-ins were going, because both goalies were like a third defenseman. And to your point, tonight Connor Hellebuyck acted like a third defenseman, which helped disrupt the Panthers' forecheck. Now, again, we know personnel has something to do with that, Sean. But today, with the personnel they were facing, Connor Hellebuyck was able to ease some of the pressure on his defense core by putting pucks in good spots, by knocking down dump-ins and knocking pucks down that were hard rimmed. So I agree with you totally. He wasn't overly busy, but Sean, I mean, we mentioned the stretch where Hellebuyck, a lot was sub 900 in 9 of 12 or whatever it was. So we're going to mention the other side of it. In 3 of the last 4 games, Connor Hellebuyck was 941, 950, and 957. So just one game against Toronto, sub 900 in that stretch. So that's an important block. And again, this isn't only about the numbers, but it's an important trend for Hellebuyck. He's starting to look a little bit more like himself. He shaved something off the goals against. It's down to 265. Save percentage up to 903. Again, this is not monumental. This is not this is not Vezina or Hart Trophy-like numbers, but for a guy that was 899, he's chipping away at the save percentage and moving back up. And that's what you ask from every player. So Hellebuyck is doing his part in helping the Jets during this hot streak, much like we talked about Eric Comrie only allowing the 2 goals in his last 2 starts. So that's an important part of the thing. We talked about it. Goaltending isn't just an automatic, even though it has been automatic for Hellebuyck. His ability to elevate has allowed the Jets to help themselves get back into this race, even though it is still a very steep uphill climb for them.
I wanted to transition quickly to Jonathan Toews. We kind of touched on it, but that stealing the puck, turning it around, that's elite. Jonathan Toews' stick was like awesome tonight. And that's one of the things that, it's funny. It's a little bit of an unheralded part of the game, but Mark Scheifele, another player tonight whose stick outside of the baubles that he had on the offensive side of things, he was so good at knocking down pucks and forcing the Florida Panthers with his stick. But that is like an elite level skill. And it's one of the things that makes Mark Scheifele really great is that he just usually has a better stick when it gets into a contested puck. Mark Scheifele wins it sometimes with body positioning, but the fact of the matter is if you're reaching for a puck and Mark Scheifele is reaching for a puck, Mark Scheifele is going to get it. And Jonathan Toews, for the vast majority of his career, was that guy. Like if he went into the corner and there's a contested puck, he's getting that puck. And yes, it's body positioning, and yes, it's the angle you take. It's a whole bunch of things, but sometimes it's just as simple as you're just more adept and faster. It's like a sword fight. And if you are, a fencer and you're just faster and better and more deft with your sword, your épée, I think it's called, than your opponent, you're going to win. And that's hockey sometimes. And Jonathan Toews was that for a lot of his career. We haven't seen a lot of it at the beginning of the year, but we're starting to see it a lot now. And that's a perfect example of Jonathan Toews getting to a player and just winning a stick battle with a player who had possession of the puck, takes it away, quickly turns it up. That I just thought. And the other thing that I kind of wanted to touch on here, on a night where the big line for the Florida Panthers, Kachuk's line, and Bennett and Verhaeghe out there were getting, the Adam Lowry treatment. And then you had Reinhardt's line matching up against Scheifele's line. This, to me, I thought was an important night because those are heavyweights, right? Those are guys who are cup winners, really, really good guys. You've got your hands full with those guys. This was a night where I thought, Ken, this is where your depth has to show up, because the advantage, if you take a look at the Florida Panthers lineup, their third line is Evan Rodriguez, great player, but AJ Greer and Mackie Samoskevich, who's a young player. Then you go down, you've got Cole Schwint, Luke Cunnin, and Sandis Vilmanis. If there was an advantage here tonight, it was that Jonathan Toews line was going to have the advantage. And I know they did it at 4-on-4, and we could talk a little bit or touch on the idea that the Winnipeg Jets have now gone 3 straight games without a 5-on-5 goal. That's probably a little bit concerning. But the fact of the matter is Jonathan Toews found his way down the lineup to make a difference, to be the difference maker and take advantage. And that's how the Winnipeg Jets end up with a point in this game, because Jonathan Toews' stick is back, because Jonathan Toews is a competitor, and Jonathan Toews found a way to take advantage of the home ice advantage by taking advantage of the matchup on this night.
Yeah, and that's something that he never got that benefit in years past in Chicago, right? Sean Patrick Kane got that benefit because JT was doing the heavy lifting in most of those games, like Lowry was doing tonight. So that was something that they needed. I mean, it's Cole Perfetti's 4th goal of the year. We know he needs to produce and generate at a little bit higher rate, but again, I mentioned Toews earlier, but I thought Perfetti was kind of back to getting a little bit more involved. We talked about last year, Prick Fetty, like getting involved physically, stick work along the boards. I thought he was highly engaged in the game today, Sean. And, those two, we talked about it a lot. Like, we're starting to see some things that the coaching staff envisioned in the summertime, right? I mean, those were things that they thought that this was going to click immediately, and those two guys would be cruising, and that, Gustav Nyquist would be cruising along with them. I mean, things have obviously changed on that front, but we're definitely seeing the chemistry starting to build with Perfetti and Toews. And obviously Velarde, Velarde, a little bit quieter game today for him, Sean. But he's been excellent. But today wasn't maybe his A+ game. But again, that line is giving them a little bit of stretching the lineup a bit. But to your point, I mean, the Jets went through a stretch where they didn't get any secondary scoring. Then they weren't getting much scoring at all during the 11-game losing streak or winless streak. And then they got hot and, put up a 20 spot in 5 games. And now they're back to a place where, the 5 on the games where they defend super well, they're having trouble generating enough, or at least finishing enough on the offensive side at 5-on-5. So, I mean, that not happy medium, that ability to strike that balance is still a work in progress here.
Couple things here I wanted to touch on. I've got it up on the screen, so we'll do this. Yep. Phil is saying, just watching the footage of where 19 for the Panthers, Chucky went after JMO, and then Lowry went after Tkachuk and gave him what for. This is a Panthers team that can take you off your game, especially with Tkachuk in there, and things can go off the rails. I like how the Jets handled this. Now, I'd said to you originally, I don't think the ref was going to call it. The Lowry hit on Tkachuk that Phyllis was talking about here after he slashes Josh Morrissey. To me, at first, that it wasn't called, I thought was ridiculous. Like it's like, and I get it. I get people don't like Tkachuk and that he starts those kind of things. But if you retaliate and it's obvious, you're going to get a penalty. And that was an obvious retaliation, which I think it should be, Ken. Like in a situation like that, where Tkachuk does that and he slashes one of your best players, clearly your best defenseman, one of your leaders, you don't let a guy get away with that. So I love that response. And I love the idea that Lowry's okay taking a penalty in that moment and evening everything out. And in the end, is that the 4-on-4 scenario that the Jets score on? That tells me something. So just like I'm a believer that sometimes fights, when handled properly, can spark a team, this is a good thing. Now, a lot of people were saying, oh, that's not fair, he shouldn't have got the penalty. This is why it's okay in my mind, because your captain, your leader comes in and says, I know your game, not on my watch, and you're not getting away with it. And if I need to take a penalty, he's smart enough to realize that there's a penalty already taken. So at the very least, all that's going to happen is it's going to get evened up. It gets evened up, but that means something out there. A team gets motivated by their leader standing up for their other guys. And I don't know how many people who have actually ever been out there and played hockey before, but the feeling on a bench when you're getting into a game and something happens to one of your players and another one of your players stands up and is like, not on my watch. I'm telling you right now, it is hair standing on end. I'm standing up at attention and I'm going now. Everyone on your bench gets going after that. It's just the nature of it. You'd have to live it to kind of understand it, I think. But maybe not understand. I think people can understand it. But if you live it, you see that it's just, there's no way that you walk away from a situation like that and you're not up and ready to go. And I don't think it's a fluke at all that the Winnipeg Jets were dominant in that 4-on-4. Once 3-on-3 happened, you can see it's a pretty even match between the two teams, but that 4-on-4, two separate lines by the Jets went out and dominated. And in my mind, they went out and dominated because Adam Lowry handled that right. And then later on, when Tkachuk tried to take it further, I thought the Jets handled it well. That's not an easy team to do that against. And I thought the Jets absolutely, in my mind, passed with flying colors at the extracurriculars on this night, to the point that it actually got them a point tonight, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, again, the response by Lowry is not surprising. It's what he does. It's why he's a great leader. I'm okay with it being called. I think that Tkachuk kind of flopped a little bit personally, but Adam Lowry is also a big guy, and he definitely bumped into him. But I think that Matthew Tkachuk was trying to get that evened up personally. And again, that's part of his job. I mean, that's why he's effective at it. I mean, it drives people absolutely bonkers. And Sean, the other thing that I did, it's going to sound, kind of wild, but I mean, when the refs sent off Greer and Logan Stanley, I think the only reason they gave them double minors is because they didn't want it to be a 4-on-4 situation.
Interesting.
Anyways, again,
it's funny because
there was not enough for double minor. Those were minors at best for me.
Gift guy texted me and asked the very same question and thought that it was odd. My take on it is in an effort to not let the game spiral, those two players were told by the refs, that's it, you've got a penalty. And then they kept going. After the initial penalty, they kept going. And I think what happens to the refs at that point is like, well, now if we let them continue going, then the next time there's a collision, we're going to call penalties, and then it'll keep going and it'll only escalate from there. So in my mind, what that is guys, we called penalties. Now I'm calling another one because you didn't stop, get to the box, go cool off kind of thing. That's how I saw it.
And also too, it's after the whistle. And then, again, after 4 minutes, and then a whistle, so things should be calmed down by that time. But and again, it will sound wild, but that's not a good trade-off for the Jets. No offense to AJ Greer, but that's like Logan Stanley had another strong outing. So for him to be sitting for 4+ minutes in this situation, and again, I'm not saying Logan Stanley did the wrong thing. He absolutely should have been in there the way that he was, and I think he definitely got clocked by Greer. So I thought that could have been a 4-2 situation. With the Jets maybe getting a power play out of it. But again, and Luke Schenn was very involved physically again today, Sean, a couple big hits. Again, people can say whatever they want, but Schenn's been playing better. He's been playing that, like, games are getting harder. Style of play is changing. Tanner Pearson's out there producing offense. Luke Schenn is playing a physical brand of hockey. Again, Stanley, full credit late in the game. He's out there on his offside with Dylan Sandberg. So that tells you that he's gaining the trust of the coaching staff to be used in second pairing minutes, which was something that is a newer development here.
So you touched on something and someone had brought it up earlier. I think I'd started the comment, but someone had wanted to talk about the idea of those two, Schenn and Stan, and how they played together, the importance of how they played. I thought they were great. I thought they were brilliant. Listen, a lot of the criticism that came about with Luke Shen came about when people were also calling to have 5, 6, 7 guys on the team waived and sent down the road, right? People were frustrated and they're looking for people to blame. And Shen was a guy getting blamed. And was Shen looking slow at times on a slow team? No doubt he was. And one of the things that I said at that time is when your system is not working well, your slower guys are going to look slow. When your system is not working well, the guys who work best within the system are not going to look as dominant as they did. And that was Dylan Samberg, who I talked about at the beginning of the year, who within a structured system is very good at knowing where the breakdowns happen and is very good at covering off those breakdowns. Shen is showing exactly right now. I had a conversation with him. He's more than confident about his play. He's more than confident about the kind of player that he can be in the playoffs and the kind of value that he can have. He's showing it. And Logan Stanley, let me just say this. It's something that we haven't said yet, and I don't know that anyone else has said it, but it's well known. Logan Stanley was a guy the organization had here, and then at some point he got surpassed by Dylan Samberg. And Dylan Samberg went out and had an outstanding year last year. Dylan Samberg's level is not this year what it was last year. And in the meantime, Logan Stanley has passed him. Logan Stanley is a more impactful player. He's not as good defensively, and I'm sure the metrics are going to say that, but he impacts the game with the rough stuff like he did tonight with the hits, with he's getting better defensively, but he is just always jumping up into the play, and he's got an element to his game that Dylan Samberg just doesn't have. It as a total package right now. He's surpassed Dylan Samberg on the depth chart in my mind for a guy who makes a difference on this team. And I just needed to say that out loud because that we said it loud and clear when Dylan Samberg did. And I'm not saying that it's a huge thing, and I'm not saying that it's going to last forever, but credit where it's due. Logan Stanley was a guy that got passed by Dylan Samberg, and in the fan base's mind was a lesser player than Dylan Samberg. Right now, he brings more to the table. He is one of the most impactful defensemen for the Winnipeg Jets. In fact, it's pretty obvious to me that outside of Josh Morrissey, he is the Jets' most impactful defenseman on the roster outside of Josh Morrissey right now. Anyways, I wanted to rewind just slightly, go to the Adam Lowry thing and say that play that he does there, even though it evens things up for me, it gave the Jets the wake-up call they needed at that time of the game. And that, of course, means it's time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call, folks. You will be glad you did, just like the Jets are glad that Adam Lowry gave them the Pristine Roofing wake-up call on this night. Ken, we have to talk about this before we go further because I'm kind of fascinated with where we're at this stage. So I don't know how many games left, and we've kind of touched on this before, but it's fascinating to me where, like, I take a look at this and the whole mathematical formula that I broke down, the expectation that one of those three teams that are occupying the 8th spot is going to win their game in hand, which means the Jets had this phenomenal stretch of hockey, and all it means is they made up 3 points in the standings. What it does is at the very least shows you that even with the Jets playing amazing, it is a steep, steep, steep mountain to climb, and the numbers suggest it is not likely to happen. If you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, who makes decisions based on numbers and probabilities and all those kind of things, he's got to take that into account. But at this stage right now, Ken, the way the Jets are playing, how hard are they making it for Kevin Cheveldayoff to be a seller if he had planned to be a seller?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's got to be something that was brought up in when the scouting meetings were taking place a couple weeks back. I mean, all teams are going through this in this 2-week block of time and trying to get themselves, situated on picking a lane. I mean, some teams, yes, we understand there will be teams that try to buy and sell. I mean, that's part of the deal for some teams. And the reason it's part of the deal for a team like the Jets, or that they would consider it, is that this isn't a rebuild or retool teardown. This is a team that, yes, they're still in it 6 points back, like you said, could really be in real time numbers 8. But they're planning on being effective also next year. This isn't a, see what happens situation. This is a, they've committed to being a team that's trying to take a couple more swings when Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck and Josh Morrissey and Kyle Connor are still, high end players that are, again, you can argue about prime or not prime, whatever else. That's somebody else's, lane to sort through. But for me, they've got to be still looking. But it is, to answer your question, it's a very difficult place to be. But this is where you have to really start digging in. I mean, you're going to have to occasionally you're going to have to make decisions that don't sit well either with the fan base or with the personnel. I mean, we know there are popular players on this Jets roster that are in danger of being moved prior to March 6th, Sean. How deep the cuts go, that, again, we've been talking about this for a while. How the Jets play in the games leading up to the Olympic break here will determine how much of a seller the Jets are going to be, and what kind of assets they can recoup and those other things. So again, and Logan Stanley's a great example, Sean. I mean, it can't be, yes, some of it is related to injury, but it can't be, coincidence that Logan Stanley is seeing second pairing minutes, because, Sean, I mean, much like we often talked about Ehlers not spending much time with Mark Scheifele at even strength. I mean, the Jets haven't played Logan Stanley in the top 4 unless it's out of necessity. And now they're giving him some runway on the right-hand side because they have to consider all of those options before they make their best offer to him in a contract situation, and or else they're going to have to consider moving him. I mean, these are the realities that he's going to have to deal with in this situation. So anyways, I think that they'll give it a little bit more runway. And again, it doesn't have to be at the Olympic break. There's still 5 games coming out of it. But Sean, if you wait too long, you may not be able to get everything that you want to get accomplished. So again, I'm not saying the Jets are buying. We've been pretty steadfast in this. They don't have a ton of assets to be buyers, but I think the Jets will still be looking to change the mix. And again, to what level that is, that's still to be determined here. Well, how do you see it?
Well, here's the deal. Here's what I think we know about Kevin Shoveldayoff. If you think about that 1 year, and if you remember the year that they missed the playoffs last in Paul Maurice's last year when he left, right, and Adam Lowry's dad took over. I had said early in that year, they're missing the playoffs, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. Same thing that I'm doing this year. And the Winnipeg Jets handled that in a little bit of like a buy and sell manner. It wasn't a true tear down. Right. And Andrew Kopp gets moved for some pieces that end up being, it was well done. They knew that the player wasn't going to stay. I personally think the Jets are heading into similar territory with Logan Stanley, which means I personally do think that if they don't trade Logan Stanley at the trade deadline, that they're going to lose him, and that is not an asset I think they want to be losing, especially the way that he's become as valuable an asset as he is. I think they may be a little bit forced in that, but here's the deal with the Winnipeg Jets. Because they don't have the same access to bring in players as other teams, and what I mean by that is unrestricted free agents typically don't come here. The ones that do are unique circumstances, and Jonathan Toews is exactly that. Is Jonathan Toews here if he hasn't been out of the league for 2 years? Is he here if he's not from Winnipeg? You know what I mean? And other than that, the other guys that you're bringing in are, let's try it and see if it works. The Nyquists of the world, the Tanner Pearsons of the world, the Kepkes of the world, right? Which work to varying degrees, right? Other than that, the Winnipeg Jets can leverage teams that are looking for salary dumps. We don't want this guy anymore. That's what happened with Stastny his second time around in Winnipeg, because Vegas needed to dump that salary. So the Jets have done a good job of going and picking up those kind of players. But the fact of the matter is, when certain players become available, and I had someone in the media text me today and ask me about rumors they were hearing. I'll bring up the player was Vincent Trocheck. They'd heard that the Jets were kicking the tires on or something like that. And they'd said, Chevy can't possibly be thinking this. And I would think 1,000% Kevin Cheveldayoff is, because here's the deal. There's only certain times the Jets can pick up players, and one of those windows is at the trade deadline. And at the trade deadline, Kevin Cheveldayoff, to me, is the exact guy, Ken, that even if he thought the Winnipeg Jets were going to miss the playoffs, if he could solve the second line center issue that has plagued the team for years, he would do that in that moment. Because I'm telling you right now, if you think Kevin Cheveldayoff is giving up on Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuyck and Josh Morrissey and all these guys, you've got another thing coming. They want to retool for next year. So right now, whether they make the playoffs or not, Kevin Cheveldayoff, in my mind, is going to do what he can at every possible moment to address the roster and try and build a roster that, if it doesn't work this year, is going to work next year. And you've already heard Renny talk about it. With all the players in the system right now, there's going to be players going. There's going to be a lot of holes to fill. It's not easy to fill holes in Winnipeg for the reasons I just laid out. So when you have an opportunity to grab something that you think, you grab it in that moment. That's how Kevin Cheveldayoff thinks. So I could entirely see this being a scenario by which they move on from some players that they don't think they're going to keep. They try and build some assets and then maybe use those assets to move and get something else so that they're not further depleting the cupboards. That's how I expect Kevin Cheveldayoff to play this. And the more the Jets win, the more confident I am that he is going to do that, because Kevin Cheveldayoff is a believer. I think his inability to answer questions at the halfway point, or the refusal to do so, is because at that time when they're losing and losing and losing, it doesn't sound very good to say, well, I believe in this team and I'm ready to double down on them again next year. But in my mind, that's exactly what Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to do.
Yeah, and Trocheck is interesting, Sean. I mean, I think the Jets have been interested, or you certainly like the player dating back to the Global Series in Finland when he was with Florida. So that wouldn't surprise me that they're interested. Now, again, what we have to always consider, Vincent Trocheck is in year 4 of a 7-year contract. He does have a modified no-move clause that includes 12 teams. And historically speaking, the Jets are often one of those teams that are on those lists. So it would take some maneuvering. But what we also know about Chris Drury, Sean, is that he's made some unpopular decisions and made things uncomfortable so that players have been open to other things. Like what happened with Barclay Goodrow, like what happened with Chris Kreider, like what happened with their captain at the time, Jacob Trouba. So Trocheck, 32 years old. I mean, it would be, you mentioned Paul Stastny's return the second time. It would be a similar situation, though I think at the time maybe Stastny only had 1 year left on his deal or whatever. So, and when it comes to the Rangers, Sean, they're in cap hell. I mean, right now they're over. I mean, their cap space is minus 1.38 million. So, yes, there's talk about Panarin being moved, but if the Rangers are rebuilding, I mean, maybe if you're Trocheck, you want to go somewhere. I mean, again, I'm not saying he's ready to waive or whatever else, but it's an interesting one. I mean, I think the Jets would like to get a little bit younger in a perfect world if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff. And I mean, today the hot name on the trade board today is Shane Wright. Shane Wright is someone that would make certainly some sense for the Jets. When we're talking about second line center, he's having a tough year. No doubt about it. He's regressed after last season, but I mean, he's also mostly played on the third line. So you wonder if top 5 draft pick like Shane Wright, in the right situation, maybe he's the kind of guy that, would have some appeal here. But again, it would take a big package to get him moved. And, that's why we're going to just have to see how things play out as it pertains to the trade deadline here. But that's why you and I are both talking about buying and selling. But again, I'm not saying the Kraken also aren't going to give him away. So if you want to attract a player like that, you're going to have to give something good in return. That's just the way these things work.
Well, and you touched on it. Trocheck, 32 years old. Like, you'd have to give futures away for that guy. So I don't know if you're like moving Logan Stanley and then getting a future asset for that, and then moving that future asset out to bring in Vincent Trocheck. And basically what you did is you parlayed Logan Stanley, who may have been leaving, into the number 2 center that you've been looking for a long time. Maybe that's how they do it. But if
similar to when they traded for Kevin Hayes, but then got the pick back in the Trouba deal for Neil Pionk.
Right. Right, exactly. A little bit of a shell game, but at the end of it, if Kevin Cheveldayoff truly believes in this core, and I think that he's shown time and time again, year after year, he's been doing it for almost a decade now that he does. Vincent Trocheck comes in at 32, and I know there's a whole bunch of people there who are going to be like hitting themselves on the head, and maybe they're right to do so. But the fact of the matter is, if that's what Kevin Cheveldayoff believes, then going out and getting a right now 32-year-old to go with 32-year-old Mark Scheifele and 32-year-old Connor Hellebuyck and so on and so forth, that honestly fits exactly in line with what Kevin Cheveldayoff has been thinking. Anyways, we hope we thought our way all around this one. I think we've done a pretty good job of it, but not as good a job as the folks at Myers Drugs do at having you covered all around the city of Winnipeg, because they deliver anywhere in the city of Winnipeg. So if you have any pharmaceutical needs, any health food needs, any supplemental needs, you know where to go. Go check out the folks at Myers Drugs, and they will take care of you. Okay, Ken, Johnston Group got you covered. Play of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I think it was a Josh Morrissey breakup of a pass. I want to say it was Bennett, but I'm going to double check by a note to you that I sent. But either way, it was involving Morrissey. Really good, smart defensive play.
Yeah, he broke up. It was a pass from behind the net, and it was going to Reinhardt, I believe.
Reinhardt. Yes, there it is. There it is.
That was one that I had. The other one that I had is there was earlier in the game. There was a pass from behind the net, and I actually wrote it down. I can't remember who the two players were, but it was redirected out of trouble by Connor Hellebuyck using his paddle. I got to be honest, like I really, really like this game by Connor Hellebuyck. I think it's a subtle, great game that he had way more of an effect. I think this is one of those ones you needed to look at carefully to understand the effect he had on this game. I thought he had a massive, massive effect on this game. And it's funny because I feel like I've had a lot of these lately where I talk about how good Connor Hellebuyck's been, and then he goes into the shootout and two shots get blown by him and the Jets lose like that. And sometimes that's all people see. I don't think this game goes to overtime if it's not for Connor Hellebuyck and the way he's playing. So for me, that's my Johnston Group got you covered play of the game. Kenny's got a different one. Hey, you can have more than one got you covered play of the game. And do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And Ken, that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, Hellebuyck made a number of solid saves, but I think that Tarasov made a game saver on Scheifele, so I'm going with that one here.
You know what? Honestly, this is a game where I'm just going to have to go with what you're saying, because this, for me, there is not a standout save in this game for me by either goaltender. It was like just so defensively played on this night that it just feels to me like it's hard to actually hand one out. So I'm just going to have to allow you.
I didn't think it was that great a save in real time, but when I went back and watched the replay, Tarasov had to push across. Now, again, Scheifele didn't get all of it. Probably would have liked to have roofed it, but it was still a pretty athletic save to get across, push across.
All right. Okay. Well,
you'll have to trust me here.
I am. You're a trustworthy fellow. You've earned it in the past. So here we go. Anyways, that's Ken's and my hashtag the keg save of the game. It doesn't matter what we think, though. It matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You'll be automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show was a comment on the YouTube page by Tweety Bird. Tweety Bird. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I'll have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And Ken, I was out with the wife and the daughters at one of those fine keg locations last night at Gary Street, where Kevin and his staff absolutely shot the lights out. Awesome. Took care of us. They were great with the kids. And I'll tell you this, those little monsters, it would have been easy for them to just kick us right out of there. But they put up with them. They fed them well. Great stuff. Billy Miner pie at the end of it.
Well done.
It was great stuff. The kids had they always have to have the mac and cheese. They're like my camera guy Colin. They went and ordered the mac and cheese and split the burger. And the burger was so big they didn't even get to the mac and cheese, but it reheated great in the oven here today. And of course it did, because it's great food at the Keg. And honestly, Kevin, great job. Your staff, great job. Get down there, folks. Go see them, because they do an absolutely amazing job. Ken, anything to say before we get going?
Yeah, just quickie. We don't self-promote often, but I had a fun story with Paul Maurice sharing his evening before the game by telling a great story about going to watch his daughter Sydney coaching for the St. Mary's Flames in the Manitoba High School Women's Hockey League yesterday after the Panthers arrived. So check that out at winnipegfreepress.com or in the printed pages of the Free Press. He shared it in the scrum with others, but just a real proud papa moment for someone who still cares a lot about this community. His two sons are in Florida, but his daughter's still living in Winnipeg. She's a teacher at St. Mary's, and Paul shared, what it was like as a dad to have to wait for his daughter after the coach suffered an overtime defeat, and what the car ride was like, and how he heard so much of himself in her voice as they broke down the game and talked about aspects of it. And it was just a really cool story. And Paul weighed in on Dustin Bufflin coming back for the alumni game and some of those other things. I mean, it's always a memory lane situation for him, but also he shared on the personal side, and another fun story to tell here. So I'm glad that I got to tell it.
You know what? I'll say this 2 years in a row, I've been on the ice with the Florida Panthers after they've won the Stanley Cup. And both times I had the pleasure of chatting quite a bit with well, not quite a bit, but a decent amount of time with Paul Maurice's family, who've been on the ice to celebrate. And if people remember the great story about his daughter that Ken is referring to, she had stayed away or I forget how it had gone, but she had stayed away from the ice because if you remember, they went up 3-0 in the series. The Oilers came storming it back 1-3 straight, and she made it to the ice like just as the game was ending or something like that. It felt like it was a little bit of the curse breaker for them. They got on the ice, and both times his son Jake, who calls hockey games, and Ken, we had such a the pleasure of him being around and chatting with him up in the press box when they were still in town. I said this, we like to kind of, pull back the curtain every once in a while. When Paul Maurice was leaving, one of the last things that I'd said to him was, if the mark of a man is in the conduct of his kids, forget everything you've done in your NHL career. Your life has been a massive success, because his kids, his family, they're gems. He's, as a father, man, oh man, what a job that he's done. And it's sure shown in his kids. So I'm glad you got to catch up, and I'm glad you're telling a story about kind of that fatherhood angle of it, because it's a part of Paul Maurice that makes him extremely special. Anyways, that's it for us. Time for us to shut things down and get out of here. Next game is going to be a hockey night in Canada, my last one before I'm gone to the Olympics for a while, as the Jets take on the Detroit Red Wings, who come in pretty hot, although they got cooled off in overtime tonight, just like the Winnipeg Jets did as they were playing the Minnesota Wild. If you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, I implore you to appreciate and support the sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Jim Pattison Toyota, Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Ferlin, Flame and Comfort, the Johnston Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs, the Keg, and of course, Myers Drugs. Thank you to them, and thank you to all of you. Let's talk and reconvene. Do this again on Saturday. Bye-bye.